Hey everyone, welcome back. Ready for another deep dive. Today we're cracking open the therapist's notebook. Well, not literally, of course, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, we've got a collection of notes and conversations about what people are bringing to therapy.
Completely anonymous, don't worry.
Yeah,
But it's fascinating stuff. It's like a window into what everyone's going through.
definitely. And it's amazing to see, even though everyone's story is different, there are these themes, these common threads.
Yeah. And that's exactly what we're going to be looking at today. Those recurring patterns that pop up again and again. It really gives you a sense of, what it means to be human, the stuff we all struggle with.
Absolutely.
Okay, so just to give you an idea, we're seeing people dealing with anxiety, relationships, and just trying to figure out that whole self-care thing. Sound familiar?
To anyone who's lived a little,
Yeah.
yeah.
Right. And the first thing that just jumps out, at least for me, is how much the past can still affect us, even years later. We have notes from this one client who had a near-death experience during heart surgery. And years later, just the thought of falling asleep would bring back all that terror.
That's intense.
I know, right? Can you imagine feeling like you actually died
Mm,
and then having to relive that every night?
that's a really powerful example of how trauma, any kind of trauma, can just stay with you. It's not just the event itself.
Right.
It's how we make sense of it, the meaning we give it. It becomes part of us, shapes our reactions, sometimes without us even knowing.
Yeah, it's like it's wired into our brains.
Yeah.
And it can show up in all sorts of ways,
Right.
like insomnia or just always feeling on edge.
Absolutely. And in relationships too, maybe pushing people away or always needing reassurance.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? I mean, about how even little things from your past can still be affecting you today. Have you ever noticed that?
Oh, definitely. It's amazing what your brain holds on to.
Like maybe something someone said years ago can just hit you out of nowhere. And you're like, why am I so upset about this?
Exactly. But the good news is there are ways to work through that.
Oh, yeah, for sure. We don't want to get too deep into the therapy stuff here, but there are techniques to help reframe those negative thoughts,
Yeah.
challenge those old beliefs that might not even be true anymore.
Yeah, to build a healthier relationship with yourself, basically.
Exactly. It's not about erasing the past, but changing how it affects you now. Okay, so speaking of relationships, that's another big one that keeps popping up. Lots of people are struggling with communication issues and just how relationships change, especially when big things happen. Like we have notes about this pregnant client who was having a really tough time with her husband.
Oh, yeah, I remember that one.
He actually yelled at her in
Right.
her own house.
Oh.
I know. And it's sadly pretty common. Big life changes like having a baby, moving, even job stuff can really put a strain on things.
Totally. Everything gets shaken up and all those underlying issues, the stuff that maybe wasn't a big deal before,
Right.
they come out full force suddenly. Expectations are clashing, needs aren't being met, and it's like, bam.
Yeah. And for this client, it seemed like she had this realization that maybe her expectation of always being put first,
Yeah.
maybe that needed to shift a little with a baby on the way.
It's tough to let go of those expectations, though.
It is. It's like they're ingrained in us.
Sometimes we don't even realize we have them until they're not met, and then there's conflict.
Right. And it reminded me of what another client was saying about feeling totally misunderstood in their relationship. Not being heard, healthy communication, and boundaries.
So important. Those came up a lot.
Didn't they? It's like the foundation of a good relationship.
Definitely. It's not about controlling your partner, but,
Mm.
being able to say what you need in a healthy way and really listening to their needs, too.
Yeah, it's a two-way street. Okay, so we got to talk about the last big theme here. Self-care. And let me tell you, this word was everywhere in these notes.
I was just going to say that.
I know, right?
Mhm.
I know it sounds kind of cliche, but it seems like it's truly making a difference for these folks.
It's not just about, bubble baths and face masks, though.
Right.
It's deeper than that. It's about, actually paying attention to what you need, putting yourself first sometimes, and having those tools to deal with stress.
It's almost like investing in yourself, isn't it?
Exactly. Because when you're running on empty, you can't show up for anyone, not even yourself.
So true. And sometimes self-care is about facing those tough things, those issues that you've been putting off. Like there was a client who specifically wanted to deal with the effects of being bullied as a kid.
Oh, wow.
And it made me think about how personal growth, it's not like you reach the finish line. It's an ongoing process, right?
Totally. It's a
about-
lifelong journey of learning and growing.
And being kind to yourself along the way. So I guess if we had to sum all this up, I'd say the biggest takeaway is